On this special weekend, as we celebrate Her Majesty's official birthday, we remember that the regiments of foot guards on parade are very much the Queen's personal troops, and that this, the magnificent Guards Chapel in central London, is their spiritual home, where so many of the regimental colours are kept. This year, it's the turn of the Grenadier Guards to troop their colour at the most spectacular military display of the year, the Queen's Birthday Parade. And this parade takes place in a year of notable anniversaries. Earlier this week, we marked the 75th anniversary of the Normandy landings on D-Day. And today, given the prominence of the Grenadier Guards, it's fitting to note that one of the most distinguished of their former colonels, the Duke of Wellington, was born 250 years ago. So the Grenadier Guards are providing today's escort. Their current colonel is the Duke of York. A little later, we'll be talking to him about his involvement with the regiment and his thoughts on taking part in the parade. In around 15 minutes' time, the Duke will be riding from the palace with other members of the royal family, accompanying Her Majesty the Queen, as they make their way to Horse Guards for the ceremony of trooping the colour. And lining the Mall, we have 14 officers and 170 men of the Welsh Guards, who this time last year were serving in Afghanistan. Eagerly waiting in the stands, at Horse Guards around 7,000 people, among them friends and families of those on parade, as well as some lucky members of the public who were successful in the ballots for tickets. We're here on BBC One for the entire parade as ever, and the great flypast by the Royal Air Force, but there's also uninterrupted coverage on the red button. And this year we are streaming live around the world for the first time on YouTube. Now, it's 9 years since the 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards last provided the escort, and so many of the families in the stands will be watching for the first time, and my colleague Sonali Shah is with some of them.
Huw, I'm surrounded by a heady mix of excitement and nerves because this is where the heart of today's support is. And I'm with the family of today's Regimental Sergeant Major Sam Brooks. Vanessa is his wife. You look like you're bursting with pride, if a little nervous.
Yes, really nervous, but very excited.
How will Sam be feeling right about now?
I think he's going to be really excited. He'll really want to get a good job done, and this is the pinnacle of his career. So
it's also his last day in the role, so kids, any message for Dad?
Good luck, Dad. We love you.
Yes, that's Sonali with some of the very proud relatives here today. And with me is someone who's experienced this parade in several roles over the years. He is Lieutenant Colonel Vince Gaunt, a man with decades of service with the Grenadier Guards. Vince, a very good morning to you.
Thank you. Great. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you with us. Let me show you 2001 and take you back to that memorably wet parade when you were the Regimental Sergeant Major. That must be memorable. I'm glad to say you haven't brought that weather back with you today.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things that I've been in charge of. Never the weather. So, yeah, I think we'll get away with it today, though.
It looks, well, potentially quite sunny, so let's hope it stays that way. Now, what are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm looking forward to, after all the hard work that all the regiments, especially the Grenadier Guards, are putting in, being their troop, all my sort of friends, people I've served with and their families, to have a great day in front of Her Majesty.
Looking forward to it, Vince. Thank you for being with us. It's always important to remind everyone that away from the ceremonial duties, the troops we see today are frontline soldiers. They have a dual role, and to underline that, the Grenadiers have adopted the saying, twice the man. That dual role is perfectly illustrated by their presence on the parade ground today, having recently returned from deployments abroad.
Hello, Zero, this is 10 Delta, radio check over.
Normally when you think of a guardsman, you think of the fellow in the red tunic and the bearskin hat, which is me. However, I'm also the fellow sat here wearing my body armour and my helmet, doing a very different job to what I do when I'm on Queen's Guard.
At the moment we have people deployed in Iraq, South Sudan and here in Afghanistan. We'll all be back together in March, getting ready for Her Majesty's birthday parade in June.
The role that we are performing out here is we're providing force protection for the mentors who help to train the Afghan National Army.
Our purpose out here in South Sudan is to provide engineering support to the UN mission.
We'll move left out of here up to this roundabout, which is a tiled roundabout.
The environment that we operate in is pretty austere. The temperatures are very hot, it's very humid, and the blokes work pretty hard to deliver the security that we need to enable the force to operate.
I'm the Senior Major of the Grenadier Guards, and we're here in Iraq to assist the Iraqis in developing their security forces so they can have a secure and stable future.
Today we've been teaching mortar lessons with a 60mm mortar. That is done by our Lance Sergeants whilst I stand it and just watch over them.
Grenadiers! Royal salute! Treason! Height!
We've been awarded our medals by the Colonel of the Regiment, the Duke of York himself, which is a very rare and special occasion.
Having been away on an operational tour for the last year, I would like to pay my debt of gratitude and thanks to all of you for the work that you have done so successfully.
The whole battalion's been on tour in different places around the world, so right now we're just having a good time after what's been quite a busy year for us.
And I'm pleased to say the commanding officer of the Grenadiers, today's field officer in brigade waiting, Lieutenant Colonel Piers Ashfield, is here with me. We've just seen the Grenadiers on operational duty. How tough is that switch to today's ceremonial role?
Well, I think actually it's remarkably easy because many of the same things we look for in operations, self-discipline, commitment, are what's required on the parade. Not least rehearsing, preparation, and as we see here, this is Empress, the horse I'll be riding a little bit later, having her breakfast before she gets saddled up and the tack put on her ready for today's parade.
So she's nearly ready. What are you most looking forward to? Are there any tricky bits?
Probably the hardest bit is the rein back on Empress, where we make the horse walk backwards, and a horse doesn't naturally walk backwards, as you might imagine, so that's needed quite a lot of preparation, and a massive thanks must go to Court Major Scholes and the Household Division Stables for all the preparation they've put in to get us to this stage.
Well, the very best of luck with today's parade. Thank you very much, Colonel Ashfield.
That was Lieutenant Colonel Piers Ashfield, today's commanding officer, talking to Sonali. And these are the guards that he'll be commanding on parade, so let's take a closer look at them now. 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards providing the escort, as we know, as well as numbers 2 and 4 guards. While number 3 guard is provided by Nijmegen Company, representing the 2nd Battalion Grenadier Guards. Then if we move along, F Company Scots Guards providing number 5 guard. And last year, 12 members of the company took part in the long walk home. They marched 100 miles from the Menin Gate to the Cenotaph for the centenary of the end of the Great War. And taking a look at the far end of the parade ground, formed up at right angles, we have number 6 guard provided by the Coldstream Guards, and it was the 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards who provided the escort in last year's parade. And a word about the Irish Guards, well, they are currently busy preparing to deploy to Iraq and South Sudan, but they are represented today by the Regimental Band, of course, and by the Colonel of the Regiment, the Duke of Cambridge, who will be riding to the parade a little later. And the immaculate uniform of the Guards is, of course, recognised around the world, and the men take immense pride in their appearance. And to understand the work that goes into the uniform, and the pride with which it is worn, we paid a visit to the Grenadiers' Master Tailor and the team as they prepared for this year's parade.
Everybody knows who the Grenadiers are. To say you are one instantly fills you with pride. Rather than being in the army and just being a soldier, you are a Grenadier. It's just that. The minute you say you're a Grenadier, the eyes lift a little bit more and people look at you a little bit different, I suppose. First time they put on a tunic, you can see what it means to be a Grenadier.
That attention to detail and the intricacies of making the tunic, that sums up a Grenadier perfectly.
Yeah, it's a good fit, that, mate. Yeah, happy enough for that.
The precision and the accuracy and the detail that's required, I think, is a testament to how seriously we take our role.
Look at the new guys and seeing the look on their faces when they're getting fitted, and that reminds me of myself all those years ago when it was me. You know, great sense of pride of wearing the tunic and the bearskin.
Yeah! Right! Yeah! Right! Yeah!
That was the first time I met the Master Tailor. Yeah, third week on the job, so I'm brand new. Everyone knows about what the Grenadiers do because they're such a sort of important icon for the British Army. So yeah, it's enormously exciting to get mine sorted.
The amount of work that goes into it is phenomenal. We work on average anywhere between a sort of 15 to an 18-hour day. Plus the guys coming back off tour, they've either put on a 1.5 stone in muscle or they've lost umpteen amounts of bits of weight.
I haven't changed, you've just gotten skinny.
Yeah. You keep telling yourself that. Yeah. Total battalion's 500 plus, and that is fitting out for 2 lots of tunics, 2 lots of tweeds. They have to have medal loops, they have to put rank on them every day. There just seems to be more people.
You need to have a sense of humour, especially at this time of year. There's a lot of early starts, getting back after a long day. The boots can take an hour, hour and a half. That can sometimes be quite tedious, if I'm honest. The Grenadiers is a massive family, and that probably doesn't really hit home until a day of the troop where you just look around and there's just 600 of you all in the tunic and the bearskin.
Thumbs down.
And you know now it's the time to shine.
Back on Horse Guards, sun is peeping through the clouds. Little light rain earlier, but it's dried up nicely now. Perfect conditions for this year's parade. And that sharp look with the uniform, nowhere more evident on parade than with the colour party. Let's look at them because they are protecting the colour that will soon be trooped through the ranks. 2 colour sentries, Guardsman Mackenzie Healy and Guardsman Garrett. And then the sergeant of the colour party is Sergeant Mark Wilson, who deployed to Afghanistan last year. Very prominent role for them today, and indeed a proud moment for all of these men and the families watching in the stands and at home. The officers taking post on Horse Guards Parade as we prepare for the first of the royal processions to come from Buckingham Palace. Very smartly marching across to their individual guards. And if we look down the Mall, that great processional route, first procession's about to leave. National Anthem being played, signalling the departure of the first 3 royal carriages from Buckingham Palace making their way to Horse Guards Parade. And in the first carriage we have the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, we have the Duchess of Cornwall and the Duchess of Cambridge. And Harry and Meghan, having recently of course celebrated their first wedding anniversary and indeed the birth of their first child, Archie. Greeting the crowds in lovely sunshine. The Duke of Kent, Colonel of the Scots Guards, and the Earl and Countess of Wessex. We have Princess Beatrice and Eugenie, the daughters of the Duke of York. Glorious view along the Mall, down towards Admiralty Arch, past the Queen Victoria Memorial. Beatrice and Eugenie, and of course there's 2 royal weddings last year, not 1, because we had the daughter of the Duke of York marrying Jack Brooksbank, who is also in today's procession in the carriage. And already, as you can see, thousands of people lining Green Park and St James's Park, ready to enjoy this great spectacle as Her Majesty the Queen prepares to leave Buckingham Palace for this year's birthday parade. The royal salutes are sounded by the field officer's trumpeter of the Sovereign's Escort, Trooper Daniel Stokes of the Life Guards, as Her Majesty the Queen makes her way towards Horse Guards in the Scottish state coach this year. Her Majesty, who celebrated her 93rd birthday in April, attending her 67th birthday parade as Sovereign, a record that is completely unmatched by any other British monarch. Passing the Great Canada Gate on the fringe of Green Park. The crowds enjoying this great scene in the sunshine here. The Queen, who first rode in the birthday parade back in 1947 in her role then as Colonel of the Grenadier Guards. A role which later passed on to the Duke of Edinburgh, who is not taking part in today's parade, having stepped down from his royal duties in 2017. And a thought for the Duke, because on Monday he will be celebrating his 98th birthday. And we should mention the royal colonels who are in this procession too, following the Queen's carriage, because the royal colonels include the Duke of York. It's his 2nd time riding as Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, having succeeded his father. A proud occasion for him, as his regiment, of course, is providing the escort today, and he's riding Derby. Derby was a gift to the Queen from Canada earlier this year. The other royal colonels, we have the Prince of Wales, Colonel of the Welsh Guards, a role he took over from his father on St David's Day in 1975. The Duke of Cambridge, riding in his 9th parade as Colonel of the Irish Guards, and at the far end there we can see the Princess Royal, probably the most skilled equestrian of the quartet, I think it's fair to say, Colonel of the Blues and Royals, a position she's held for over 20 years. So the Queen's procession well on its way, that mile or so along the Mall to Horse Guards Parade. And approaching the parade ground we have the first 3 royal carriages. And there's been a change of formation to greet the carriages. Number 3 Guard has opened up to allow access to these first 3 carriages. And as they cross the parade ground, the national anthem will be played. coachman having saluted the colour, and Prince Harry saluting the colour as he passes the parade ground towards the office once occupied by the Duke of Wellington, because that is where the members of the Royal Party will be watching today's parade. It's a great vantage point. The office currently occupied by Major General Ben Bathurst, the gentleman commanding the Household Division of the British Army and General Officer commanding London District. But today, his office is being used by the royal guests. And Vince, the Royal Party will be met by a guardsman, and you've previously fulfilled that role. I'm just wondering what the day is like and what those duties are.
Well, it's a very privileged position to be in, and I had that privilege as the garrison commander. What the job was, I would meet all of the extended family and members of the immediate family, and then take them upstairs, help them upstairs, and then, you know, show them into the office. And the atmosphere is electric. They're here to celebrate, as we all are, Her Majesty's birthday.
Would they pepper you with questions?
Lots of questions, very inquisitive. You know, they would want to know, the younger members would want to know if they'd been to school with any of the people on the parade, where they stood, what guards were what. Although they've got a programme, even though the older members of the family, they would also ask questions if something has changed, and I would be there to sort of fill those questions before they all got ready to jockey into position and make sure they've got a good position in the window to watch the parade.
I was about to ask, is there some competition for the best viewpoint?
Certainly is, yeah.
Well, they're going to enjoy the parade, and we'll enjoy the parade as well. Leading the Sovereign's escort along the Mall is the Brigade Major, Lieutenant Colonel Guy Stone, who began his career with the Welsh Guards, and it's his responsibility now to ensure that the procession runs like clockwork, and this is his second year in the role. He spoke to us a little earlier.
The Brigade Major principally is in control of all the timings, all the coordination. As I'm leading Her Majesty down the Mall, I'm getting a constant feed of information to make sure that I'm at the right place at the right time. I would be lying if I said it wasn't nerve-wracking. It's pretty daunting, but we've been doing this for a long time, so we know exactly how long it takes. It requires great concentration from the soldiers, making sure they're fully committed to what they're doing, and if they put their minds to it, then we'll be okay.
The Brigade Major riding Sovereign Shadow, and directly behind him 4 troopers of the Life Guards, including their first ever female soldier, Trooper Nina Croker, and alongside her troopers Mackenzie, Martins and Dell. And they're followed, I think it's fair to say, by one of the highlights of the parade for many people. The glorious sight and sound of the mounted band of the Household Cavalry. It's a great sound, great sight. Directed by Major Justin Matthews, who first took part in the birthday parade a quarter of a century ago as a mounted kettle drummer. This will be his last parade as he's retiring next year, and it's nice to enjoy some of the music. The heart of the procession, of course, the Queen's carriage, preceded by the 1st and 2nd Divisions of the Sovereign's escort, and that segment provided this year by the Life Guards in their distinctive red tunics and their white plumes. And as we look at the plumes, by the way, the helmet design was completed by Prince Albert back in 1852. So the 1st and 2nd Divisions provided by the Life Guards, and there we have the 3rd and 4th Divisions of the Sovereign's escort provided this year by the Blues and Royals in their glorious navy tunics and red plumes. And this tradition of inviting the Household Cavalry to escort the Sovereign to the parade was introduced by King George VI back in 1937 to add to the spectacle and to add to the grandeur of the event. Now, Vince, you've taken part in, I think, 7 birthday parades, and I'm just wondering at this point, did you ride in any of them?
No, There was the previous Major General did sort of joke with me a few times. I think there was a bit of seriousness there, and he tried to get me to ride, and you know, I always managed to be elsewhere in the full dory or sick or something.
No regrets?
Not at all. No, I'm not made to sit on a horse. I'm an infantryman.
Well, we can look and admire then, can't we?
We can.
Trooping the colour, of course, organised to mark the Sovereign's official birthday. Tradition that started with George II, whose birthday was in November, and who moved the ceremony to the summer in the hope of good weather. That modern tradition of doing so started with Edward VII. We mentioned the 4 royal colonels. There are 2 non-royal colonels, also an important part of today's procession to Horse Guards. Colonel of the Coldstream Guards, Lieutenant General Sir James Bucknell. He comes from a very impressive military family. His brother and father were also Coldstreamers. He's on parade today with his 2 sons, by the way, and he's carrying the sword that his grandfather used in the First World War. And the other non-royal colonel is the Colonel of the Life Guards, Major General Sir Edward Smith Osborne, newly appointed Colonel of the Life Guards. He's been commanding officer to both Princes William and Harry, and indeed Harry served under him in Afghanistan. Good moment as we look at the Mall and the magnificent display of Union flags to say that the Sovereign's birthday is also marked in several other ways. The Union flags flying along the Mall and indeed on government buildings. There's a 41-gun salute by the King's Troop in Green Park a little later, as well as the impressive flypast by the Royal Air Force, as we have the publication as well of the birthday honours list. We'll have something to say about that a little later on. And for the birthday parade, the flags of all 53 countries currently in the Commonwealth are flown along Horse Guards Road. And the flags are flown in the order that their countries joined the Commonwealth, starting with the Union flag, and then we see finishing the flag of Rwanda, which is on the northern side of the Guards Memorial. Queen enjoying the views and the crowds. And so nice to have a contingent of Chelsea pensioners with us today, enjoying this spectacle. Proudly standing to attention as Her Majesty arrives on the parade ground. The Chelsea pensioners led today by Major Frankie Howell, formerly of the Irish Guards. And as the Queen's carriage makes its way onto the parade ground, we will have the familiar sight of the head coachman, Matthew Powers, saluting the colour with his whip. And that salute completed means that the Queen's birthday parade of 2019 is about to begin. The field officer will give his command. The anthem will be played, and at the stroke of 11 o'clock, the Royal Standard will be released. Well, the Queen's first task is to inspect the line of 6 guards, and of course also an opportunity to hear the music of the mass bands. The man in charge is the Senior Director of Music, Lieutenant Colonel Darren Wolfendale of the Irish Guards, joined the army as a clarinetist back in 1981. And the music for the slow inspection is Entrada, written by the American composer Alfred Reed. Music changes to Queen Elizabeth's March, which was written for Queen Elizabeth, Queen Mother, back in 1937. It's a good moment for us to reflect on the fact that this is quite an intensely personal moment for the Guards, because they make direct eye contact with the Sovereign.
Well, that's right, Hugh. Yeah, we get the guys. This is their moment. This is what they're here for. They're here in front of the Sovereign to just look as best they can. And as she goes past, they'll have that special moment where all the guardsmen are instructed to look straight at her, and she looks back, and she knows what she's looking for. It's a great moment for them. It's a proud one.
Because the one thing you can't doubt is the Queen's expertise.
Oh, not at all. No, she knows exactly what she's looking for, and they know it. So you know they're on their best. It's the best they can be.
Queen's procession passing the Sovereign Standard of the Life Guards, which bears the regimental battle honours as well as the Royal Coat of Arms. The standard bearer, Corporal Major Daniel Snoxall. Then the procession will continue past the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, commanded by Major Harry Wallace. The carriage driver will salute the lead gun, which is in effect their regimental colour. In the procession we have Major General Ben Bathurst, who took command of the Household Division 2 years ago. He was commissioned into the Welsh Guards in 1983. Now, this is Lieutenant Colonel Darren Wolfendale's last year as Senior Director of Music, and this year's programme does feature popular marches, some personalised selections, and one piece which, it has to be said, is something of a rarity.
I think what's unusual about this year is that the composer is actually on the parade at the time it's played.
The march is entitled Twice the Man, which is inspired by the regimental recruiting poster of the Grenadier Guards. This refers to their dual role, which is ceremonial and operational.
And he's composed it specially for this troop, and it's a really good piece of music. It sits really nicely in the parades.
Having it performed on such a world stage is something that most composers can only dream of. So it's an absolute gift.
Parades like this don't come around every day of the week. It's definitely the pinnacle of anybody's career. So after 38 years, I'm really pleased that this will be where I finish my career. So I'm a very happy man.
Yes, it is unheard of for a musician to compose a march and to perform it on the day, so we look forward to hearing that new composition by Ian, Twice the Man, in just a moment. And let's reflect on that phrase then, Vince, Twice the Man. Where does it come from?
Well, as you can see, you know, we are ceremonial soldiers, but we're fighting soldiers first. You know, we are there on operations, as you've seen through a number of films. So the operational side is important, and we sort of hang on that. That is where our lifeblood is. So we can change. We've got a skill that we can change from operations and change into ceremonial troops, and that's where it sort of comes from.
Is it difficult to combine the roles? Do they find that a challenge?
No, not really. It'll depend on the individual, but I've got to admit, you know, it's a seamless. You know what you are joining. So as you can see today, you know, you would want to go through your whole career and not do what we're doing today.
Her Majesty has returned to the saluting base now that the inspection is complete. And the massed bands are ready for their star turn, I think it's fair to say, because the parade is about to get underway with a very popular march, Les Huguenots, and this year marks the 150th anniversary of this arrangement.
Westwards! By the centre! Slow! March!
Standing by for the trombone to be raised by Sergeant Andrew Mercer, the signal for the counter-march for the mass bands. old to the new, and this is Lance Sergeant Ian Shepherd's composition, Twice the Man. This is the piece making its debut at the Queen's Birthday Parade. There we have the lone drummer breaking away, Lance Corporal Booth from the Corps of Drums, marching to a position to the right of the escort. That's ready for the next phase of the parade. Drummer playing 8 bars of a field signal called the drummer's call, recalling an age when communications on the battlefield used the drums. And we have an orderly, Guardsman Beamami, marching forward to take the pace stick from Regimental Sergeant Major Sam Brooks, who can then draw his sword.
Reminder! Change! On! Standard! Ease! Escort for the colour! In close order! Left! Dress!
Subaltern of the escort, Captain Robert Lang, giving the order for members of the escort to take up their dressing in close order, a tighter formation for the march forward to collect the colour in a few moments.
Escort for the colour! By the left! Quick march!
The escort stepping off with great energy and flair to the rousing march of the British Grenadiers. They'll march forward and hold some 16 paces from the colour party, ready for the collection to take place. Vince, we are now approaching a very big moment for Sam Brooks when the eyes of the world are upon him.
Yeah, I mean, he's the only one to be in a position like this. You know, everything is about timing, but if you are the Sergeant Major of a Foot Guards regiment, you know, to do operations and go on operations as Sergeant Major, but to do this job is very, very special indeed, and I'm sure he'll relish every moment of it.
Escort for the colour. In open order. Right. Dress. Left hands. We retire. About 10. Guard. Turn. Change. Arms. Slow! On!
So Regimental Sergeant Major Sam Brooks now preparing to take possession of the colour, protecting it with his sword, ready to hand it over safely to the ensign, 2nd Lieutenant Robin Mackworth-Young, who will then troop the colour through the ranks. And this is what they've been preparing for weeks, isn't it, Vince?
It is. You know, the eyes of the nation is now on them, and they would have practiced this. And you know, today is the day not to get it wrong.
Second Lieutenant Robin Mackworth-Young, today's ensign, safely receiving the colour, placing it in his white colour belt.
Escort to the colour! Present! Arms! Escort to the colour! Low! Arms!
So the ensign and the Regimental Sergeant Major resume their positions within the escort, and we've now entered a new phase in this birthday parade. The escort for the colour, having taken possession of the colour, has now become the escort to the colour.
Escort to the colour! Change! Arms! Escort to the colour! By the centre! Slow! March!
So the escort advances in slow time. The bands play Escort to the Colour by Richard Ridings. This tune has been played at this point ever since 1978. Very soon the bands will have to negotiate this rather daunting manoeuvre. We have 200 musicians supported by the Corps of Drums, having to change direction without changing formation. It's what is known as the spin wheel. Being watched very closely and carefully by the royal guests in the Duke of Wellington's old office above Horse Guards. And Vince, in your many different roles on the parade ground, I suppose you've seen the spin wheel at very close quarters.
Yes, I mean, as a young guy within number 4 guard, you would be in that corner, and that particular manoeuvre seems chaotic, but it works its way out. But there's a wall of sound that hits you. There's not a feeling like that. And of course, you've got to maintain your sort of steadiness and your ears open to find out, you know, to make sure that you don't miss anything on the parade.
It's difficult, really, isn't it, to convey the power and the majesty of the sound the bands make.
Yeah, it literally is something that hits you. That sound just hits you, and you know, it just takes a bit of getting used to on all the rehearsals.
So the music changes as the Escort makes its way. Colour and Escort continuing their slow march through the ranks. The ceremony, the formal ceremony of trooping the colour gets underway. Grenadier slow march arranged by Fred Harris. And the specific honour here is to parade the regimental standard, or the colour, the very heart of today's parade. Colour emblazoned on the Grenadiers' colour, 45 of their battle honours, and those honours also embossed on the officers' swords. Such a special moment for the ensign, Second Lieutenant Robin Mackworth-Young, who told us earlier how he felt about being accorded this honour.
My ancestor actually won the Victoria Cross in the Crimean War whilst defending the colour, so for me to be carrying the Queen's colour on parade is a particular privilege. Of course I'll be nervous on the day. Certainly some hairs will stand on end, and I'll be very conscious that a lot of people are watching, but I'll also be conscious that it's not just my moment, but it's very much my company, the Queen's Company's moment, and the regiment's moment.
Yes, his pride more than evident, given the honour that he's been accorded today. And Vince, the colour was last used on the battlefield more than 100 years ago, in 1881. So, is it fair to ask what its relevance is to the modern soldier?
Our history is everything to us, and from a very short age, as a recruit, we go through regimental history with them, so they know the depth of the regiment. And of course, it's bragging rights, as you mentioned. There's things that battle honours are all on the colours, and it's the heart of the regiment. It's the atmosphere changes, it's protected, and everybody knows what it is and what it stands for.
When you say everybody, one would expect the more experienced officers and soldiers to fully appreciate that, but what about the younger ones?
Well, as I said, it's sort of bred into them from a really early age, so they understand the importance of that colour, and they, as I said, it's one of those areas where they will always sort of talk about, and particularly today, they will sort of use this as they go through their careers as one of those places where they can say, that was my time, that was my colour.
It's a great moment for them.
It is, yeah.
Escort to the colour. Well advanced. Left. Turn. Escort to the colour. Change. Up. Escort to the colour. Present. Up. Guard. Slow. On. Officers. Take post. Quick march.
Colour now moves to the rear of the escort, ready for the march past to take place.
Numbers 1 to 5 guards will retire. About. Turn. Numbers 1 to 5 guards. Up the hole. Right ball. Quick march.
On the march, Corps of Drums performing Hazelmere, composed by Drum Major Tom Burkitt just after the Second World War.
Numbers 1 to 5 guards will advance. About. Turn. Number 6 guard. Close order. March. Number 6 guard will move to the right in 3. 4-3. Right. Guards will march fast in slow and quick time. By the left, slow. March.
So the trooping has been completed, and the next phase of the parade, the march past, is about to begin. The mass bands playing 2 neutral slow marches. By neutral we mean they're not tied to any particular regiment. First is called Duke of York, which was adopted by the 1st Guards in 1805, when the Duke at that time became their colonel. Vince, it's worth mentioning that this is Major Neil Strachan's 2nd time as captain of the escort, having carried out the role in 2014, I think, with Nijmegen Company.
That's correct, Huw. Yeah, it's not that he got it wrong the first time. He was a senior captain, locally promoted, or acting major when he commanded Nijmegen Company. And today, you know, he's one of the senior majors in the regiment, and the premier company being the Queen's Company, he's you know, front and centre. So very unusual indeed.
Just to underline, really, for viewers who are maybe coming to the parade for the first time, as you say, it is highly unusual, given all the roles that we see, the spectrum of responsibilities. It's very unusual to do the same role twice.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, you know, a very unique position he's in today, and you know, well done him.
And a word about the Major of the parade, Major Ed Paynton, who's taken part in 8 previous birthday parades. This is his first on horseback, by the way. I think it's worth paying tribute to Ed as well, Vince, because this is quite a difficult role.
Bit of an unsung hero. He would have to know everything that the commanding officer, Piers Ashfield, knows on the parade. So, you know, he's the second one down. He's the second in command. So if something happens, he takes the reins, so to speak, and then he runs the parade, the same as he would do on the battlefield. He's the senior major, the second in command.
So he's standing by with all of these words of command committed to memory as well.
That's correct. And throughout the rehearsal process, he would have had the opportunity to actually command the parade and give those words of command.
So the escort preparing to move off, led by Field Officer in Brigade Waiting, Commanding Officer today, Lieutenant Colonel Piers Ashfield. And Vince, I think you were a captain with the Commanding Officer, so tell us a little more about him.
Well, yeah, I mean, we both served together in Afghanistan as captains. He's been a number of times to Afghanistan. He's a good guy, he's a good bloke. And he stands out, you know, he's always done that. He come from a particularly strong group of peers, of which he stood out, and I don't think they would be upset in me saying that. He, from a very early age, he was picked to, you know, to move up and to be where he is today, and he thoroughly deserves it.
Well, preparing to march past Her Majesty on the saluting base, Prime Minister and Philip May, the President of Sierra Leone, with them also today, among the 7,000 strong crowd in the stands around Horse Guards Parade. Lots of the Prime Minister's colleagues, ministerial colleagues. The Prime Minister, of course, has just stood down as leader of the Conservative Party, but will still be Prime Minister for the next month or so. So as we prepare for the march past, I think it's worth also asking ourselves, for the Field Officer, as Vince was saying, someone he knows very well, what will today mean for him?
Well, as you've seen early on in the programme, he's led his regiment on operations, and again, a Foot Guards Household Division man on parade today in front of Her Majesty, commanding this. He's the pinnacle, you know, he has done it all, so operationally and ceremonially, he's done the whole bag, so, you know, he will feel very, very proud indeed.
It's the 15th time that the 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards have had the honour of trooping their colour for the Sovereign. Music changes to the slow march of the Grenadier Guards. As Her Majesty prepares to acknowledge the colour. Queen maintaining a very sharp focus on what's going on. The ensign having lowered the standard, what's known as the flourish, and will then raise it in what's known as the recover. Massed ranks of Grenadier Guards marching proudly past the Sovereign, and looking on proudly, I've no doubt, is the Duke of York, watching his regiment marching past the Queen, herself of course a former colonel of the Grenadier Guards. It's worth asking at this point about the Duke's involvement with the regiment. Vince, what do we make of it?
Well, having taken over the position from his father, he's threw himself into the position as the colonel of the regiment. He gets involved even at the lower levels. I mean, he visits, and when he does visit, he just doesn't stay at the top end. He works his way to the bottom, and he spends a lot of time with the young guardsmen and young non-commissioned officers, and discusses regimental business with them and other things. At the end of the day, he's just a guy. He comes as our friend, he comes as our colonel, and not a member of the royal family when he visits.
Music will change for the arrival of the Scots Guards. Number 5 Guard, F Company Scots Guards, nicknamed the Immortals, following the Battle of Spurred back in 1915. They're marching to the tune of Garb of Old Gaul by General John Reed of the Backwatch. Coldstream Guards, slow march. Coldstream Guards formed in 1650, the oldest continuously serving regiment in the British Army. The adjutant of the parade, Captain Ben Tracy, who also has a brother serving in the Grenadier Guards. Field officer, brigade waiting. Lieutenant Colonel Piers Ashfield riding out to salute the Queen to indicate that the slow march past has been completed. The Queen acknowledges. And as we enjoy today's parade in nice sunshine with all of these bright tunics, the great display of colour, it's worth thinking about a century ago. The biggest ever parade, Trooping the Colour, took part in Hyde Park. 11 units of Foot Guards paraded then. Imagine that, having just returned from the Great War. Look at this, there were so many soldiers there that there weren't enough scarlet tunics, so the Guards to wear their khaki uniform. And this piece of music, the Soldiers' Chorus that we're hearing now, was played that day as the slow march of the Guards Machine Gun Regiment. How things have changed. So to underline, it is of course a remarkably proud day for those on parade, but also for the families, and Sonali Shah has been speaking to some of them.
I'm with Lady Iona Mackworth-Young, mother of today's ensign. Sophie Harris is engaged to today's subaltern, and Alex Thatcher here has twins on parade today. Now, Iona, we do have to start with that photo. Robin becoming ensign looks like a childhood dream come true.
It is. He's always wanted to join the army. And as a little boy, when we gave him this Guards outfit, he was so excited and loved marching up and down. And for years, as a child, he would go to sleep listening to military band music. The Trooping of the Colour music was his nighttime music every night.
You must be so proud today. Sophie, you got engaged to Robbie just before he deployed to Afghanistan last year. Was the timing of that commitment, did it make things harder or easier?
I think it definitely made the goodbye that bit tougher, but it means so much to all of them to go, and you know, it's such an important part of their job. And then to see them all here today performing their duties in such a different capacity to what they were doing a few months ago, it's such a privilege to see and such a special day to be a part of.
Alex, twins on parade today. I can't imagine how proud you must be. Tom is a guardsman at the Grenadiers, and then you have Ben, trooper in the Life Guards. Is there a bit of healthy rivalry between the two?
Yes, there's always been rivalry between them since they were born, yes.
Was it inevitable that they'd both join the army?
They've always wanted to, and I never doubted they would, but today is a whole new level for us, yes.
Thank you so much for talking to us, ladies, and good luck with the wedding.
Thank you very much.
Some lovely sentiments being expressed there, and family, obviously, hugely important to the Grenadiers, but it's a different dimension, Vince, isn't it? Because the regiment sees itself very much as a family.
Well, it does. We are a family regiment, and we form a bond. You know, we form a brotherhood, whatever you want to call it. You know, we live, eat, and breathe together, especially on operations. You know, where we look after each other, and we use a buddy system. And of course, in barracks, it's exactly the same. You look after who you know, and you form that bond and friends, and it's a friendship for life.
The Defence Secretary since May this year, Penny Mordaunt. And there we have senior military figures, and we have Cressida Dick just in the top of frame there, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. It's a great sight. Guards reforming, ready to march past in quick time. Great style. A new change of tempo led by the senior time beater, Sergeant Neil Brocklehurst, band of the Scots Guards. Neutral quick march is Wellington March, composed by Zayler. And as the Queen knows, it's been a very busy week for the Grenadier Guards and everyone else, Her Majesty included. It's the second inspection for many of them, because on Monday, Nijmegen Company was inspected by President Trump and the Prince of Wales during that state visit of President Trump and the First Lady. As the Guards navigate this corner section of Horse Guards Parade, this vast expanse, Vince, that involves a challenge.
Yeah, this is probably the most difficult sort of area, because in this corner they would have changed from slow to quick time, so from 65 paces to 116 paces to the minute. And of course, coming into the corner, they've got to change arms so they're in the right place for when they march past. Yeah, it's a difficult corner, but as you can see, they've got away with it, and it looks great.
More than got away with it. It's looking very stylish, very energetic. Music is the Grenadiers Quick March, arranged by Cappy. Number 3 Guard approaching, Nijmegen Company Grenadier Guards. Queen accompanied on the saluting base by the Duke of Kent, who's Colonel of the Scots Guards. Number 4 Guard, Inkerman Company Grenadier Guards, originally part of the 3rd Battalion, which no longer operates. Music soon to change to the Scots Guards Quick March. Familiar tune of Helen Laddie, the quick march of the Scots Guards. Rousing tune. Number 5 Guard, provided by F Company Scots Guards. The role of number 6 Guard today taken by the number 7 Company Coldstream Guards. Regiment has served in every major conflict of the past 350 years. Their quick march is Milanolo. By the way, if you're just looking at all the guards and wondering how you recognise them, we have posted a guide to recognising all 5 of the Guards regiments on our Twitter and Instagram feeds. Look for the account BBC Studios Live and you'll find it there. So the massed bands Playing the neutral quick march, the Liberators, and this is being played in tribute to those who took part in the Normandy landings, the 75th anniversary of which was marked earlier this week in Portsmouth and in Bayeux. Queen, of course, attending that event in Portsmouth. Commanding officer, having signalled that the march past in quick time is now completed. And as the Guards reform for the next stage of the parade, a moment's respite for the commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Piers Ashfield.
Well, obviously it's a massive privilege and a huge honour. Most importantly, it's a great opportunity for all of the troops to show off their medals on their tunics in front of their family and friends. My son's sort of asking, you know, am I going to be the red soldier or the green soldier? Every time I step out the door, which is nice. Interestingly enough, I have a picture here of me when I think I was age 5, and I'm there with my brother. My son now has that very same fancy dress outfit. It's a little bit big for him at the moment, but he'll grow into it. And I'd probably say it's a bit of a warning to all the parents whose children have fancy dress, tunic and bearskin that, you know, fast forward 25 years, you never know where that small gesture may well lead you.
Well, it's a bit of a warning, but it's a source of pride too, Vince.
It is, yeah. I mean, as a family man and everything else, it's all, he sort of plays that part really well. So, you know, he bonds with all the way through. His wife and children get involved with the regiment, and you know, he's in a great place. He really does.
So we have the Guards almost at the end of their intensive phase of marching for a while. Is there relief at this point?
There is a slight relief, but you know, they've got to remain alert and sharp to what's going on. You know, underneath those tunics, regardless of what you feel of the weather today, they'll be soaking wet with sweat, so they'll be dehydrated, they'll be breathing heavy. You know, there's dust in the air from the marching around, which is about to get worse with all the cavalry. So, yeah, it's a difficult moment to stay sharp, stay switched on, because there's still a job to do.
Well, they're looking good.
Yeah, they're looking great.
Officers, take post. Quick march. Guards, in open order, left and right, dress. Mass bands will move to the right, right, 10. Mass bands by the left, quick march.
So the Foot Guards having reformed, and soon it'll be the turn of the mounted troops to pass the saluting base. Household Cavalry, King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, and the mounted bands of the Household Division. So the mass bands, therefore, marching to one side to clear a path for the mounted bands. So we have the band of the Household Cavalry moving on to Horse Guards Parade, led by the Director of Music, Major Justin Matthews. Accompanied by Mercury and Perseus, who, like all the drum horses of the House of Cavalry, hold the rank of Major, and they are the property of the Queen, ridden today by Lance Corporal Lekai Lee and Lance Corporal of Horse Richard Brown. And the majestic arrival of the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery. It's the 22nd year that the King's Troop has been on parade. 5 officers, 58 mounted troops, 76 horses and 6 guns part of the birthday parade today. They were given the name, the King's Troop, by King George VI. And his daughter, the Queen, requested that they should keep that name in memory of her father. The Regimental Sergeant Major is Warrant Officer 1 Daniel Fox, who joined the Army 21 years ago. His son is a gunner with the Royal Artillery. Music being played is the Royal Artillery Slow March, composed by Duchess of Kent, the mother of Queen Victoria. Watched very closely by the Queen because the lead gun of the King's Troop is in effect their colour, so it's accorded the same relevance as the Guards' colour. And these 13-pounder quickfire guns that we see are over 100 years old, and one of them is reported to be firing in the first rounds of battle at the Somme over a century ago. Music changes to the regimental slow. The Life Guards. What a magnificent sight. Sovereign's Escort, acknowledged by the Royal Colonels and by Her Majesty the Queen. Led by the Field Officer of the Sovereign's Escort, followed by the Escort Commander, Field Officer Tom Seckham, riding for the second time in the Queen's Birthday Parade. The standard having been lowered by the standard bearer, Corporal Major Daniel Snoxon. Two divisions of the Blues and Royals. A regimental slow march is called the Blues and Royals. Household Cavalry, of course, consisting of 2 regiments, the Blues and Royals and the Life Guards. And this year, it's the Life Guards, as we know, having the honour of riding in front. Blues and Royals following the 3rd and 4th Divisions, the 2 senior regiments of the British Army. Serafile Captain is Captain Robert Pereira, riding Oscar, and the farriers, with their glinting axes, historically the ones who would dispatch horses injured in battle. Music changing to the tune of the Royals, composed by Blankenberg. It's the King's Troop. The Household Cavalry make their way down the side past the Guards Memorial. Field Officer's Trumpeter, Trooper Daniel Stokes of the Life Guards. This is Trooper Stokes' second birthday parade, his first as Trumpeter. Signalling the neutral trot, the Horse Guards trot. Trumpeter traditionally riding next to the commanding officer, always on a grey horse, which could be seen more easily on the battlefield among a sea of black horses. So the turn of the King's Troop again to trot past the saluting base. And it does surprise people, Vince, when we remind them every year that the involvement of the King's Troop is not some kind of ancient tradition.
No, not at all. I mean, it makes a very recently, within the last decade, have they been part of the parade. But I would just say that, this brings the whole thing together. So, you've got the artillery, the guns, you've got the cavalry, tanks, and you've got the infantry foot guards. So it all makes the battle. So, if you look at the way the battlefield is formed, this is it.
And as this is going on, all this activity, all this colour, all this energy, just a word about the soldiers who are standing and waiting patiently?
Yeah, well, they haven't got a choice, so they'll be there, but they'll be asking, well, they may be thinking, ride a bit faster so we can get off, but there's still a lot to do, so, remaining alert is important.
King's Troop based at Woolwich, 75 horses on parade today, all of them colour graded from light bay to black. And when the horses are named, they're given the same initial letter as the commanding officer, so many of the horses parading today have names beginning with W for Major Wallace. Majesty now acknowledging the colour of the Life Guards, which remains at the carry during the trot past. Life Guards tracing their history back to the court of the exiled Charles II, and music has always been important to the regiment. We spoke earlier, Vince, about the bugle calls, and again it's worth reminding people that the use of the bugle is not redundant.
No, most of the regiment you see today will use the bugle for different parts of the day, so the daily routine. So for instance, in Reveille, the bugler would have got up early than everyone else. He would have blown his bugle for the Reveille, and that means, get out of bed. And then throughout the day there'll be a dinner call. There's even a call for, drop everything, and for those on duty to report to the office. So the last thing at night, go to bed.
Director of Music, Major Justin Matthews, leading the Band of the Household Cavalry as they pay their tribute to the Queen on her official birthday. Kettle drummers riding the drum horses, crossing their sticks in their individual salutes to Her Majesty the Queen. These musicians wearing the state coat, which signals that they are members of the royal household. The crimson velvet, the gold braid, the lace. It's a great sight. It's the oldest ceremonial uniform in the regular army, and it has remained virtually unchanged since 1685. As we watch the mounted band, Vince, I think it's worth paying tribute as well to the fact that they are undertaking several challenges at once.
Well, yes, I mean, they would have gone through basic training the same as everyone else, but then they would have done the trade training at Nella Hall for their musical ability, and to be posted to the Household Cavalry Band is something that is quite special, and they would have to gone through 6 months of riding training to get to this point.
So the Band of the Household Cavalry halts. The Director of Music will turn inwards, signalling that he's handing back control to the field officer for the final birthday salute.
Guards! Royal salute! order! Left and right! Dress!
The Guards take their dressing, this time all the Guards, in one long line. And just let's pay tribute to the fact that this precise move is accomplished with no word of command being given.
Guards will form 3 ranks! Form 3 ranks! Guards will retire! About turn! Undo! 5 divisions! Right full! Quick march!
Tune is the adjutant, posed by Drum Major Tom Burkett, as the Guards close up to reduce the length of the procession along the Mall as they all return to Buckingham Palace.
Guards will advance! About turn! Guards on the escort will form close columns. Remainder by the left. Quick march!
Corps of Drums playing Prussia's Glory, posed by Gottfried Tiefke. This is the moment where the pace stick will be returned to the Regimental Sergeant Major, Warrant Officer 1 Sam Brooks, by the orderly, Guardsman Bear Mammy.
Guards! Left! Dress!
And the left guide of the escort, Colour Sergeant Kamal Richards, moving out to the right there so that all the Guards can see him clearly, and when he drops his arm, it's the eyes forward to signal to all 6 Guards. And making his way to the approach road as we near the end of the parade is Garrison Sergeant Major Warrant Officer Class 1 Andrew Stokes. It's his 4th birthday parade, and it's worth just underlining the immense role that the Garrison Sergeant Major plays in today's parade, Vince.
Well, today's parade is all orchestrated by him, and Sam Brooks would have taken his battalion and regiment and everybody else through, but it would have been Vern, that would have been the guy who puts everything together to make it is what it is today.
What were his qualities?
Well, you know, I know him well. He's a good guy, and again, he's one of these guys who people may not know that he's actually a major in the army, and he's the Garrison Sergeant Major of London District. He's got those sort of qualities where he stands out.
Field Officer asking Her Majesty's permission to march off to conclude this birthday parade of 2019.
morning, Your Majesty. Your guards are formed up, ready to be marched off now.
Field officer in brigade waiting, having completed most of his duties now on this parade in 2019, and so far Vince can be pretty pleased with it. I think
it's gone extremely well. I think that everyone on parade has done a fabulous job, and even looking at them now, you know, they are steady, they're ready to go, and you know, that they'll be there all the way to the end.
Garrison Sergeant Major signalling that all is ready for the Queen's procession to leave the parade ground. And you mentioned that you know Andrew, or Vern as he's known. A little bird says you taught him all he knows. Is that true?
Well, I taught him some of the things he knows. I wouldn't say I taught him everything. He's a top soldier, and he's specially selected. I was his instructor for the late entry officers course. When he was selected for a commission, they have to go through a course, and he came through. He was an excellent student, and you know, it's no surprise that he takes all the glory today.
Well, he's had an exceptionally busy week with the state visit and the events in Portsmouth, and of course leading up now to the Queen's birthday parade, and the success of the week, lots of it has to go down to him, surely.
Well, it does, as everyone will know. You know, there was a tunic, there were sailors, there was airmen, and you know, he orchestrated the majority of all of that, and he did it really well, and you know, everybody should congratulate him for that.
Great scene on Horse Guards Parade as the Queen prepares to leave the parade ground. Those royal guests who were in the Duke of Wellington's old office have now left the building, and they are making their way back to the palace already, ready for that little reception that takes place before the appearance on the balcony a little later on. They'll be looking forward to the party, surely, but also the great birthday flypast by the Royal Air Force, and that will be a highlight for lots of these people waiting in the park. It's a great spectacle to end the day. The march-off music, very appropriately, is a tune called Arromanch. Another reference, of course, to D-Day, because that was the little port where British troops landed on the beach codenamed Gold, one of the 5 landing beaches of the Normandy invasion that we've spoken a lot about this week. The Grenadier Guards heavily involved with the Battle of Normandy, most notably Operation Goodwood, just weeks after D-Day took place, one of the biggest tank battles of the Second World War. So that heritage, that tradition, and the pride in that very much alive today, Vince.
Yes, it is. I mean, they, as I said, history is one of the main factors, one of our great recruiting, you know, parts of what we do. So, you know, it runs through the entire regiment, and as you can see, they, you know, they're here today, and they're showing off and looking large and being massive.
Well, Her Majesty's enjoying the sunshine, and it didn't look like a sunny morning, I have to say, when we turned up a little earlier, but it's been really pretty perfect in terms of conditions for everyone on parade today, and it's a lovely end with this rousing music. Let's have your honest verdict on the parade then, Vince.
Well, I would say, because it's the Grenadiers trooping the colour, that it was an excellent parade, and you won't get better than that.
Is that wholly objective, do you think?
Yes. Yes, I think so.
So what happens now, of course, is that the Queen and other members of the royal family and senior officers, including the Major General and others, will return to the palace. And without giving too many secrets away, Vince, I think that's the time when some conversations are had about the parade, and the Queen, if she does have something to say, good or bad, she'll express herself.
Oh, definitely, yeah. In the past, I've heard that the commanding officers have gone there, and indeed peers will have the chance to meet Her Majesty and other members of the royal family straight after this parade. And if something has gone wrong or something different, she would have noticed that, and she's on the money. She will tell you the way it is, and she will pick you up or and pat you on the back in the same way. So, as I said before, she's got an eye for detail, and that's where she lets you know.
With the magnificent sight of the Household Cavalry, the Blues and Royals, this brings a formal end to the Queen's Birthday Parade on Horse Guards, but the celebrations continue. And later, the King's Troop will be riding into Green Park and firing a 41-gun salute, after which the royal family will appear on that famous balcony to watch the traditional birthday flypast by the Royal Air Force. And this tradition, by the way, of the monarch leading the guards back to Buckingham Palace was established by George V back in 1914, because the parade at that point had become so popular, it was decided to provide an even more impressive experience for the thousands of spectators. And no one here today would quibble with that, because there are many thousands of spectators gathered in central London for one of the big events in the royal and ceremonial calendar. And indeed, the monarch leading the troops back towards Buckingham Palace is one of the great sights of the day. And as the carriages make their way along the Mall, they'll pass the streetliners of the Welsh Guards, who've been on to me all week about mentioning the fact that they too are providing a very important service today. So let's hear it for the Welsh Guards, who've done a sterling job standing patiently in place since before the procession began. And let's face it, Vince, it's an exhausting job.
Well, it is. They're there before anyone else. They're the unsung heroes. They're up before everybody else. They're out before everybody else, and they're the last ones back into the barracks. So they've got a job to do. They're intermingled, as you will see, along the line, lining the route, with the Metropolitan Police, who we work closely with within London District. But they've got a job to do. They'll be looking at the other side of the road to ensure that if there's anything going wrong, they can bring the notice of the policeman to that particular issue.
And just wondering how, as the Queen watches very carefully what's going on, how the streetliners keep their energy levels up. And we've discussed earlier about the kind of feat of endurance that's involved, not least on the parade ground. So how do the streetliners do it?
Well, there is areas of patrolling which they're allowed to do once the processions have gone past, but it's a long stand for those guys. So what we do is there's a little trick where we issue them barley sugars, and they press that barley sugar between the belt and the tunic. And of course they have to get people's attention to, take it out of the belt. Somebody, member of public maybe, or St John's Ambulance, or even a policeman, unwraps the sweet and pops it into the guard's mouth.
It's very neatly done.
Yeah, it is neatly done.
So as we follow the royal carriage procession back to the palace, I'm delighted to say that we've been joined again by the author and commentator Robert Hardman, who writes for the Daily Mail, and the broadcaster and Sunday Times journalist Roy Anika. To both of you, a very warm welcome. Thank you very much for coming.
Morning.
And Robert, as a seasoned observer, I'm just wondering, what is your verdict so far on the 2019 parade?
Well, Huw, as ever, a magnificent sight, and underlining once again that profound bond between the monarch and the monarchy and the armed forces at the end of a week when that really has come to the fore, both with the state visit of the President of the United States, where a lot of echoes of the great transatlantic alliance of the Second World War, we heard a lot of those in the speeches, and then those very moving, intensely moving anniversary commemorations of the 75th anniversary of D-Day, with the Queen absolutely at their heart earlier in the week, again quoting her father. Those veterans, they were there, they were the King's men fighting for King and country, and here was the Queen, today the only head of state in the world who served in uniform in the Second World War. There she was, speaking not just on behalf of Britain, but as she said, on behalf of the entire free world, thanking them. And here now, there she is at the heart of her troops, and I think it just goes a long way to illustrating that historic bond.
I've been struck, Robert, in the past few days by how many people have come along and said that they listened to every single word Her Majesty offered in Portsmouth in a very short address, but that every word packed a punch.
It did. I think she'd given it a lot of thought. It was a very touching moment as well, as she was in a sort of sealed-off VIP area with the veterans and the world leaders, and she began her speech and she talked about the resilience of the D-Day generation, saying that at the 60th anniversary, who'd have thought they'd be here at the 75th, but here they are. At which point there was a great roar from the crowd you could hear in the distance, and I think there is this real sense that the Queen represents so much more than it's not just the crown. She is a living link with what many would call the greatest generation in our history, and I think people were immensely touched by her words.
There was a notable air of surprise when we had to repeat that the Queen was 13, already 13 when the Second World War broke out. So that's the link, isn't it?
It is, and she was in uniform. She became a Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, who we've seen today, in the middle of the war on her 16th birthday. It was her first military appointment. It means an awful lot to her. And then, of course, she was serving in the ATS by the end of the war. She lived through those dark days. She remembers the stresses on her father, the King, in those very dark days after the fall of France, and that sense of that redemptive sense of that reassurance when America came into the war in the run-up to D-Day. I think all those emotions were as true to her as to anyone else during this week's anniversary. It definitely was made a very strong undercurrent to the US state visit, and then to see her at Portsmouth meeting and listening to those veterans and looking really animated, really enjoying that splendid service. It's been a week that she will remember just as much as the veterans who were there themselves.
It's been a very special week. Roy, it's great to have you with us. What strikes you today?
I think the thing to remember about this as well is it's very much a family occasion. We've been reflecting on the week, that the sort of state and ceremonial elements of the week that the Queen has had. This for her is very much a family day. And so we have, of course, seen the Duchess of Sussex back to work for the first time since having baby Archie just over a month ago, joining the Queen and members of the royal family. Just watching that beautiful sight, it's always spectacular to see the Sovereign's escort of the Household Cavalry accompanying the Queen back to Buckingham Palace. And as you mentioned earlier, Huw, there are a couple of really interesting stories this year with the Household Cavalry. Trooper Nina Croker being the first female trooper to serve with the Household Cavalry, something that the Queen has been made aware of, riding on the retinue with her in the Sovereign's escort on the way back. Also alongside Trooper Croker, Trooper Samuel Sullivan, whose father, Steve Sullivan, survived the IRA bombing in 1982. He is also riding on the retinue at the back. And I think something to reflect on Lieutenant Colonel Paddy Williams, who is the commanding officer of the Household Cavalry, his first trooping as commanding officer. Will be absolutely thrilled with how his men and women have done. Colonel Paddy was awarded the Military Cross for his service in Afghanistan and Helmand province, and I think that's the key thing about the Household Cavalry, which we're seeing now. They are the operational and ceremonial regiment. So a wonderful day for them. Great to see all the royal family. We're looking forward to seeing perhaps a new face on the balcony shortly.
We shall see. We shall see what transpires. It is a big year for the Household Cavalry, and as we mentioned earlier, after 200 years they're leaving their home in Windsor, relocating to Salisbury Plain, and to mark the occasion they were given the freedom of the town, and that was in a parade attended by the Princess Royal, of course, is in the parade today as Colonel of the Blues and Royals. And Vince, that's an historic moment, isn't it? Because, you know, most regiments move around a lot, but not the Household Cavalry.
No, I mean, they've been very lucky to be honest. You know, that they have been in Windsor for some years. I mean, they're three regiments. There used to be a regiment of heavy tanks in Germany, light tanks, armoured recce, which is still in Windsor, and of course the ceremonial side of it, which you see in Hyde Park Barracks. But yeah, I mean, for them, they put down roots, you know, family ties, as we've been talking about families throughout the programme. You know, it is a bit of a tug for them to move from that area and move elsewhere as part of the Royal Armoured Corps, but it is what it is, and so you should be prepared to up sticks and move. And you know, a lot of other regiments, as we said, have done that in the past lots of times.
Queen riding alone in the carriage, which reminds us that the Duke of Edinburgh, of course, having stood down from his public duties, is not attending the parade. He'll be celebrating his 98th birthday on Monday. It's the second year that he's not attended the birthday parade, of course, having attended for all of those years. I think it's a fair bet, Robert, that he'll be watching.
I think it's certainly a fair bet, Huw. Not only watching, probably taking notes. And
That's a scary thought.
It's certainly a scary thought for those in charge of this parade. There will be a post-mortem, I have no doubt.
This is the first time that the BBC has streamed the event around the world. It's on YouTube in a new departure, so reaching a whole new audience. There's been intense interest in it, and Roya, I think that reflects the fact that we're at the kind of time where people like tradition, they like that link with the past, and what happens today, and this display today, a very impressive military display, is the kind of British tradition that still is incredibly popular around the world.
Absolutely it is, and I think we saw that this week with the state visit of President Trump. We saw the pomp and pageantry of British military doing its very best, and those are the kind of traditions that the Queen really respects and admires, and that's why her birthday parade, Trooping the Colour, is so important to her and to the whole family. Observing those traditions, and also the monarchy, as you mentioned earlier, the close links with the armed forces. The Queen is head of the armed forces, Colonel-in-Chief, paying her respect and her thanks to her armed forces as well.
Robert, I think it's fair to say that one of the themes in your book, which is called Queen of the World, is that it is to do with the fusion of old and new. It's to do with the way that the royal family is somehow able to hold on to its ancient role, if you like, in terms of our history, but also blending some modern elements, and that's not an easy balance to make.
No, it's not, Huw, and it's something the Queen has been very conscious of throughout her reign. That sense that monarchies have to evolve, they have to move with the times, or they disappear. But at the same time, they mustn't get ahead of the times, and it is a tough balance. But days like today, as you say, you've got all the full panoply, the tradition, the pageantry, what people expect to see when they come to Britain. But at the same time, we see younger members of the royal family coming through. It's, as you say, it's being live streamed, and throughout the year, we've seen a range of events, from the very traditional ones to modern events. We've seen, whether it's the Duke of Sussex organising his Invictus Games, or some of the new developments of the Duke of Cambridge with his work with football and mental health. You see the royal family doing the things that people expect them to do. There we see all the family out waiting there to welcome home Her Majesty as she comes back to the palace. And very much ancient and modern together.
This year, taking salute at the centre gates, Police Sergeant Ray Wrigley, served with the police for over 30 years, along with his colleague PC Ian Davey. With him today, they'll be retiring this year, so a lovely day for them to remember. As the royal family looks on, the Earl of Wessex in the centre there, and the Duchess of Cornwall. It's worth reflecting on the fact that those taking salute are ready for the changing of the guard in Buckingham Palace, which of course is a daily event. But as we'll see a little later, rather special this year, because the Queen's Colour Squadron of the Royal Air Force has been mounting the guard for the past 24 hours. It's the first time they've done so on the Queen's birthday parade itself, before the Grenadier Guards take over today. As they do in tradition, the Escort will mount guard after the parade itself. And that's a duty that lots of people don't realise exists, Vince, the fact that the work is not completed.
I mean, these guys would have been up 6:30, some before that, and they've gone all the way through this parade. The not only the physical but the mental aspect of doing something in this sort of area, this magnitude of a parade. When it comes to the end of the parade, the guys will then mount guard at Buckingham Palace and carry out their duties to what we're all used to.
So the Queen has returned home, back at Buckingham Palace, watched by many members of the royal family on that balcony. In a short while, Her Majesty will join them, ready for the traditional birthday flypast. and thousands of spectators enjoying the proceedings already, others making their way along the Mall to gather in front of the palace to enjoy that spectacle too, so plenty of expectation there. And having attended the parade since he was very young, the Duke of York has now completed his second birthday parade as Colonel of the Grenadier Guards. It's a good moment for us to catch up with him. I spoke to him just a few days ago during the preparations for today's event.
Your Royal Highness, good to talk to you.
Good morning.
Can I test your memory a little to start?
Yes, of course.
Let's have your earliest recollection of the birthday parade.
Oh, I must have been, I suppose, about 5 or 6, watching it all unfold from the window at Buckingham Palace, and then to go and stand on the balcony and see everybody coming back. Those are my earliest memories of the troop.
How has your perception of the event changed over the years?
It's interesting because as a child one looks at it as all frightfully exciting. There's lots of red tunics, bearskins.
Old Guard and New Guard are on parade together until it is over.
And then having the role of Colonel Grenadier Guards thrust upon you, I have a completely different appreciation of the effort that everybody puts in, not only for their own part in the parade, but it's the number of different pieces that fit together.
Can we talk about the role of Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, because there's a very rich heritage to the role, and indeed you're following in the footsteps of the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh.
I don't remember my mother being the Colonel. I mean, I learnt a lot from what my father has been doing as Colonel, but you put your own little twist on it. And so what I've been working at is getting to know everybody. You have to remember that these are household troops. These are the people that are the closest to the monarch, and the Queen's company is the Queen's bodyguard.
We have been speaking to quite a few of the guardsmen, and they all say the same thing, really, which is that they're impressed by the level of your involvement and your commitment to the role.
I come from a service background, so I understand how important it is to be able to work with, as it were, your men. And if you've had a ship, as I've had, you understand what they expect of you. It's about making everybody realise that we are all of one company. I happen to be a member of the royal family, but I've been there, done it, seen it, and it's a great privilege, as it were, to be there, what I would describe as ceremonial head.
I am constantly amazed by the reports that I get from around the world about how the Grenadiers actually perform as a team. I am extremely proud to be your Colonel, and I look forward to seeing many of you as the next couple of years goes by.
Given that the Grenadier Guards are providing the escort, taking centre stage, that adds a different dimension again to this year's parade for you.
Yes, somebody will be with notepads and pens.
Always are.
Always are in those occasions. Oh, yeah, well, he's done that wrong, or oh, that was good. But I'm looking forward to seeing, as it were, my soldiers on parade, doing what I can only describe as an absolutely outstanding job.
What is it, in your view, that explains the enduring popularity of the parade?
We're very good at pomp and circumstance, but there's so much more that underlies all these various parades, and we are but just a small cog in a very large machine that is the United Kingdom and what it stands for.
Is it possible for you to fully enjoy the parade in this role, given that you've got to think about quite a few things?
Oh, no, you enjoy it.
Right.
There's a sort of half a brain that is working on what's he going to be doing underneath you, and you particularly enjoy it when you haven't fallen off and you've got yourself back inside the gates or through the archway of Buckingham Palace. That's the moment when you can go, ah, well, it was last year. This is only the second time I've done it, so it's going to be an interesting experience.
Your Royal Highness, we wish you well. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
indeed.
Thank you so much.
Great pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes, that was the Duke of York describing his involvement with the regiment, preparations for today's parade. And so to hear about the relationship from the perspective of the Grenadier Guards, Sonali spoke to their Regimental Lieutenant Colonel before this morning's parade took place.
Major General Rowley Walker, you work very closely with the Duke of York in his role as Colonel of the Grenadiers. It sounds like he's thrown himself right in.
We're about a year into his colonelcy, and I am amazed by how much time he's given up
to spend time with us. So he's been a really engaged and active colonel.
Do you think his military background has helped that transition into that role?
I think it's a huge part of it. There's instant empathy with our soldiers. Grenadiers have been on operations this last year. He knows exactly what they're going through, what their families have been going through, and they can look at him and see someone and realise we're all of one company.
So there's that mutual respect. What do the Grenadiers say to you about him?
I think they're very pleased because he's so visible. He's made a real effort to get to know them. He's entertained them of all ranks, some of our retired veterans as well as the most junior ones. So they all know him, which is a large part of being the colonel.
Over the past couple of hours, we've heard a lot about the importance of family in the regiment. And of course, the Duke of York is taking on a role that both his mother and father have had. Has that helped?
I think he's got expert advice from two former colonels. And I think it means a huge amount to us that they've kept it in the family.
Now, you yourself, 9 years ago, led the parade. How proud are you of the regiment today?
Very. I'm relieved that I'm not doing it again. But no, it's a huge day, and I know the commanding officer has put a lot of effort into getting this ready. And like 9 years ago, they've just returned from operations, and therefore there couldn't be a more fitting way to showcase their return back to these shores.
Thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Back at Buckingham Palace, with Her Majesty the Queen having returned and the royal family now having left the balcony. They're in the rooms there to enjoy a bit of a reception before the flypast takes place, and we have the changing of the guard in the forecourt. So we have the Grenadier Guards taking over from the Queen's Colour Squadron of the Royal Air Force. Having finished the birthday parade, they'll take their positions right away and stay on guard until tomorrow.
March.
Standing prominently to attention in the great archway at the centre of Buckingham Palace to symbolise this handover of the Guard today, commanding officers respectively of the Queen's Colour Squadron and the Grenadier Guards. The first time that the Queen's Colour Squadron of the Royal Air Force has been on guard duty on the day of the birthday parade. They have of course provided guard for many times over the years, but it's the first time that it's coincided with the birthday parade, and their commanding officer today, Ben Alcock. And as we see the ceremony taking place, which is very familiar to lots of people who turn up in the morning at Buckingham Palace during the year for one of the main features of London life. It's worth underlining again, Robert, really, that military service is something that the Queen places such importance on.
She does indeed, Huw. It's often said the Windsors really are the ultimate forces family. The Queen is the daughter of a Royal Navy officer, married to one. Her children, grandchildren have been in the armed forces, and I think when you sort of spent pretty much every day of your life with someone in uniform, often even at the breakfast table, following you everywhere, your life frequently involves events involving all the armed forces. It comes second nature, and it's incredibly important to her, and it matters a great deal to the armed forces. Going back to the veterans we spoke to this week, all of them talk about their pride in the Queen and the Crown. And today's servicemen and women will all pay tribute to the importance of that bond.
Changing of the guard taking place in lovely sunny weather, which reminds us that the conditions can often be a challenge for members of the armed forces on a day like today, what can often be a sweltering day. Some 2,000 soldiers on parade, and some 300 horses too, as we saw. Thousands of members of the public, of course, gathering in St James's Park and around Horse Guards and Buckingham Palace, and looking after them is very much a full-time job. So we spoke to 3 individuals, each of whom plays a different part in ensuring their welfare and well-being on the day.
My name's Tony Whiting, and I am the Tactical Commander for the event of Troop of the Colour of 2019 on behalf of St John Ambulance. Our job here today is to provide medical cover for the public, the military and the Met Police in this particular area.
My name is Major Harriet Telfer. I'm the Regimental Veterinary Officer for the House of Cavalry Mounted Regiment, and I'm responsible for their health and welfare throughout the parade.
My name is Major Ian Parsons. I'm a cardiology doctor monitoring the guards at the Queen's Birthday Parade to try and find out why some soldiers are more susceptible to fainting than others and what we can do to prevent it from happening.
That's a flow in your pulmonary artery. Okay. Certain stresses that tend to make it worse are heat and standing upright for prolonged periods of time, which is very relevant in terms of the Queen's Birthday Parade. And I think if we're putting our guys in that situation, we have to do whatever we can to be able to make life easier for them. No one quite knows why the fainting reflex happens. We think it's probably just a brain preservation thing. It just hits the brakes, turns everything off, and then down you go. So it's not weakness on your part, it's just what it is. We are working on something at the moment, and the Queen's Birthday Parade might be a really good way to test that in sort of field research. So field research is always better research because it's much more true to life.
Event control from Silver.
Go ahead, Silver.
It's just, can I just confirm that the Foxtrot units are now on the parade ground?
Yes, many thanks.
It's a well-planned event, so it means that the casualties are quite few. From a patient point of view, it's blisters, cuts, grazes, people that were unwell in the morning but didn't want to miss the event, so they come down and they need our assistance. You all right, James?
Good sips of water is always a good thing in this weather.
Even though it's quite warm, we can't assume that it's just the weather. There could be an underlying issue there, and that's what we will check out.
How are you feeling now? Fine, thank you.
Please do a radio check.
Yeah, thank you.
Control standing by. Your pulse is 120. Pulse is a little high.
They're calling you on. You've got another female collapse down on the parade ground at Bravo 1. St John Ambulance is there for the members of the public, but if a senior officer requests urgent medical assistance, then our members are allowed to attend the parade ground itself. We're here to make sure that people go home. The whole point of being here is only if something goes wrong, and if we do, we want to provide a quick and safe service for those people.
Just a normal trot up, please. Whenever our horses go out for a state occasion, we will always take out the veterinary ambulance. We very much prepare for the worst and thankfully have never, touch wood, seen it. Good boy. If a horse were to go lame on the parade, then our priority is that horse's welfare. We will take it to one side, take all its tack off, cool it down, give it a drink. If it is a severe emergency, then at that point the veterinary team will leave the parade and return the horse to barracks.
Just trying to build up a bit of a picture, really, to see at what point during the parade people faint, who's more at risk. We've got a good idea who we think will be. So if you get closely down the rank, what you might see some of the soldiers swaying backwards and forwards. Now that's not something they're taught, and that has the effect of improving the blood supply from the veins back up to the right side of the hop. There's one there you can just see rhythmically swaying backwards and forwards like this. It's quite subtle. The medics here on standby, obviously seen something, sparked their attention. So just how one of the bands have fainted there. What they'll try and do is get him over to the main ambulance point and get him cooled down, back on his feet, and he'll be right as rain in a couple of minutes.
1, 2, 3, good lad.
This year we've adopted some conservative measures. Tradition always previously was that they do physical training in the morning. That has the effect of decreasing your blood pressure. And so that can put the guardsmen and the bands more at risk. We've also directed the soldiers to increase their salt intake, so we may actually have a before and after picture to see if any of those have had a good effect.
Having raced up the Mall, I'm pleased to say that Major Parsons has joined me fresh from the parade ground. Now, we saw you in the film taking lots of precautions against fainting. Did they work today?
Yeah, absolutely. No fainters today on parade, which I'm very pleased to say. Can't take all the credit because I think it was a bit of a nice, well, the weather was certainly less hot than the previous couple of rehearsals. So, yeah, but everything seemed to work well. We essentially asked the guys to salt load as of Monday, and tried to get them acclimated as much as we could to the heat. As we know, thermal stress is a big thing in making people faint, and that, appears to have done the job. What it does is it increases the plasma volumes, the amount of water in the blood, and that just means that you can stand up for longer. It's a little bit of a trick to hyperhydrate you. We've also just tried to sort of understand some of the old wives' tales passed down through the generations to try and work out what's useful and what's not too useful, wiggling toes, eating sweets, that sort of thing.
Can you give us any tips on what's not useful?
Well, the big breakfast. I mean, it was always a thing that soldiers marched on their stomach. Actually, a big feed, we think, probably diverts all that blood flow to the gut, and then you've not got it all beating out through the heart. So we try and just try and work with the commanders to be able to support the guys as much as we can.
And one key thing about your research is that it may help operational duties in the future.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. So, I mean, it's two extremes of soldiering in a way. You've got the ceremonial stuff and you've got the operational stuff. But in a way, if you swap the bearskin for a helmet, swap the tunic for a body armour, the physiological stresses are very similar. And we hope as we move forward with ways to sort of be able to support the plasma volume, that the stuff that we're working on towards fainting will be useful in operations deployments. So one of the main reasons for people coming into hospital when I was deployed in Afghanistan was because of fainting.
Well, all the best with your research, Major Parsons. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Just a sense of the pride and the excitement of the day itself. And look at that great sight. Vast crowd making its way along the Mall, down towards Buckingham Palace, with the Queen Victoria Memorial glinting in the sunshine. And it's turned out to be a lovely day, I have to say. Very soon we'll be in Green Park, just to the left of the image there, and we'll see the King's Troop moving into Green Park for the 41 gun salute. Why 41? Well, there's a 21 gun salute for the Queen's official birthday, and then they add another 20 gun salute because it's taking place in a royal park. So the crowds here will hear it very, very clearly. A 41 gun salute in neighbouring Green Park, which will fill the skies with sound around Buckingham Palace. It'll be heard all through central London, because of course the King's Troop fire their guns on all important events, ceremonial events, including the Queen's actual birthday on the 21st of April. We were explaining earlier that today is the official birthday, a tradition that was restarted by Edward VII about 100 years ago, just over 100 years ago. This tradition of organising the official birthday on a day like today. There's no better example really of the reason for the official birthday in June, especially for those monarchs who suffered a birthday in the depths of winter, as lots of them did. So June seemed a better option than November. And there you have the movement of people. It's a great flow, a great sea of people moving around towards the front gates and the main carriage gates of Buckingham Palace, ready for the flypast itself. And we caught a glimpse there of the King's Troop making their way into Green Park. And Roya, I just think it's worth at this point noting what the King's Troop contribution is to a day like today, because we were saying earlier it's a relatively recent addition in 1978, but by now they've earned their place as a pretty irreplaceable part of the parade.
Absolutely, and those incredible that we can hear the rumbling in the background, yes, of the gun salutes. They've been such an important part of today and all week actually. We saw and heard the amazing gun salutes for the President Trump's state visit earlier in this week, and they are one of those sights and spectacles that everyone really looks forward to seeing and hearing on the day. It's such an extraordinary sight and sound, the King Street War Horse Artillery.
You know so many of them very well, and I'm just wondering, what is their attitude to taking part in events like this?
Well, I've been lucky enough to spend much more time here with the Household Cavalry, and the Household Cavalry, I mean, for them it is such an honour to take part. They are, of course, the most senior regiment in the army, the Queen's Monarch's personal guard. It's a very proud day for all of them, and as I mentioned earlier on, the key thing to remember about the Household Cavalry, which you can sometimes forget on days like this, which is all about ceremony, is that they are part of the Household Division. They are the only operational and mounted ceremonial regiment in the world. These are men and women who have served and will serve on operations abroad. They are fully trained in reconnaissance and tanks, and of course they're all moving shortly from Windsor to Bulford on the armoured side. So for the Household Cavalry, it's a very important reminder of their connection with the Queen, but also the dual role which they hold. Well,
one of the traditional birthday celebrations is the announcement of the new honours list, of course. Among them, we have Warrant Officer 1 Lee Hutt, who gets the Meritorious Service Medal today. A mention of Lee because he plays a crucial role in organising the birthday parade. And a mention too to our friend David Cole, who's the Director of Music at the Royal British Legion, but lots of other deserving recipients of awards as well today. Congratulations to all of them. And Sonali's been joined by a guest who has a special reason to celebrate today.
That's right, Huw. Look who has a very big smile on her face today. I'm with the BBC's Culture, Arts and Entertainment correspondent, Brenda Amanis, who has been awarded an OBE for services to broadcasting and diversity. When did you find out? Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I found out, I think it's approximately a month ago now, so I've had to keep a secret till then, which has been the hardest thing ever.
And who was the first person you told?
It had to be my mum, and the look on her face, I think, was worth it all. I mean, that's what it was all about for me, really. My mum's obviously post-Windrush generation, and they came here to better themselves and for better for us. So to be able to say, hey, Gay, look what I've done, and to see her response. And I know what it means for her, and the validation is important to her. So I'm delighted to be making her a happy bunny this morning.
Do you know when you'll be visiting the palace?
I don't. You know, I don't know a thing about the protocol from here on. I didn't even know what to do when I got the letter. It was a bit of a shock. And it was a formal letter. It was a white land show, and it wasn't brown, so I knew it wasn't bad news. And it took a while to get used to it, and it took a while to learn to keep my mouth shut and not say anything. So what happens next, I'm not sure. I think I'm panicking about what to wear.
But you've been working very hard outside of your BBC commitments, trying to increase diversity, talking so much about the importance of arts. Do you think it will actually just aid your work?
I hope it does. I really do. I mean, I'm passionate about the arts, and I'm passionate about people, the arts community. I think arts is a transformative. I think it's important. I think it brings us all together. And to be able to use that to push my passion for inclusion is just a gift, really. I think we all have our own unique DNAs. We all have something to offer, and I think all we ever want is the opportunity to do our best and be our best, and that's what it's about for me. That's what diversity and inclusion is about, and to be able to do that is amazing.
Well, many congratulations again from all of us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
In Green Park, King's Troop preparing to fire the first round.
Number 1! Fire! Number 2! Fire!
Commanding officer, Major Harry Wallace, is the one giving the orders.
Number 3! Fire!
The interval between each round of fire is 10 seconds.
Number 4! Fire!
Each round counted and marked on a leather pad.
Number 5! Fire! What? Number 6! Fire!
King's Troop playing its important part in today's celebrations of the Queen's official birthday. We're looking ahead to the appearance of the royal family on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. And as we know, last month the royal family welcomed its youngest member into the world, the birth of Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor. And over the years we've seen many royal youngsters making their first appearance on the balcony at the birthday parade.
Young Bonnie Prince Charlie is a thrilled spectator, watching his mother receive the traditional honours of a sovereign.
The march past at the palace was barely over when down came the rain. Anyway, the crowds ignored the weather. They wanted to see the royal family on the balcony.
Now, of course, the crowds are waiting to see the Queen on the balcony. And when she appears, to their loudly expressed delight, she has 3-month-old Prince Edward with her. His first taste of a lifetime of public occasions.
And the moment all the crowd have been waiting for. The Prince of Wales carrying Prince William. And what an amazing sight. You take Harris as the princess.
And there, our glimpse of Prince George and his first appearance on this balcony.
It's the first time we've seen a sovereign and 3 future sovereigns together in public ever.
The first appearance on that balcony for Princess Charlotte with the Duchess of Cambridge.
The Royal Standard, the immense Royal Standard fluttering in the breeze above Buckingham Palace, telling us that the Queen is in residence. As we will find out in just a moment if there'll be any first appearances on this balcony. But before we talk about those, it's also worth, Robert, noting that one of the veteran observers, if I can call him that, the Prince of Wales, is also in a very significant year, the 50th anniversary of his investiture as Prince of Wales.
Indeed, Hugh, yes, in this great week of anniversaries, it's important to look ahead to the end of the month, and it will be 50 years since that great day at Carnarvon Castle when he was invested as Prince of Wales, and he'll be going back to Wales at the end of the month. This time not to Carnarvon, in fact, but he's going to Swansea, which is also celebrating 50 years. It was 50 years since Swansea was given city status. The Prince conferred it himself after he'd been invested. He went on a tour of Wales, went to Swansea and made Swansea a city. So he's going back there. He'll be welcomed by charities from all over Wales, and he will go on a tour of Wales, as indeed he does every summer. I think he's going to Llandaff Cathedral, which I'm sure you know, Hugh, well.
Very well, a fine place.
And he's going to visit the home of the great Welsh poet Hedwyn. So it'll be a week of great Welsh events. But yes, thinking back to that extraordinary day in the summer of '69, in the space of a month, you had 3 amazing things. You had man landing on the moon, you had the first ever royal documentary, and yet you had this, going back to this theme of ancient modern, there in the ramparts of Carnarvon Castle, you had the Queen crowning her son as Prince of Wales.
Modelled, of course, on the great ceremony invented by David Lloyd George for a previous Prince of Wales back in 1911, I think.
Absolutely right, which in turn had sort of drawn various influences from going back to, well, your Welsh history is far better than mine, but I think Owen Glendower and beyond.
Giving us a pretty good overview. Roy, are we expecting any surprises in this appearance on the balcony or not?
I think I've just seen some lovely photos of Prince Louis with Princess Charlotte watching from behind a curtain, watching his father back down the Mall. So I think we are going to see, fingers crossed, Prince Louis make his debut on that balcony, which will be quite a lovely sight.
Well, that will indeed, because we've been looking at the debuts on the balcony for lots of royal children over the years, and the ages do vary, so this would be quite a young appearance.
It will be. He just celebrated his first birthday last month, but it will be the same age roughly as Princess Charlotte and Prince George made their debut, just under and over 1. So it'll be lovely, the first time we've seen all 3 Cambridge children on the balcony with some of their cousins, and Prince Louis will be seeing a wonderful fly past, which Prince George always so enjoys.
Looking up into the skies, where we see the fly past starting to form. high above the skies of central London. And waiting for the Queen to lead other members of the royal family out onto that famous balcony to greet the crowds, of course, and they'll be delighted with the sight. But of course, to be there in time, in good time, for the flypast to take place. They don't want to miss it. And there, we can see the windows opening. And Her Majesty ready to urge her relatives, a close family, onto the balcony itself, to a great roar of applause from the crowds below. Prince of Wales, Colonel of the Welsh Guards, Duke of York, as we mentioned earlier, talking to him about his role as Colonel of the Grenadier Guards. And there we have the new appearance.
Absolutely. Prince Louis making his debut on the balcony. That's a very lovely sight. Duchess of Cambridge just holding him close, and very sweet little outfit, which looks very reminiscent of an outfit the Duke of Cambridge wore on the balcony when he was a little nipper. Oh look, he's
having a good look, and he clearly likes the fly past.
And he's perfected his royal wave, Huw. The Duke of Cambridge will be encouraged by that. He's spoken of his hopes that all his children, boys and the girl, will be involved in the armed forces one day. Prince Louis looks like he's well on board with that plan.
So we have the formation of helicopters. We have a Puma piloted by squadron leader Liam Glaspie and Flight Lieutenant Karim Zid, who conducted his flight training alongside Prince William in 2009-10, and we have the Chinook, of course.
See the Duchess of Sussex there again on the balcony, out in public for the first time since the birth of Archie.
It's like the Phillips children there have their flying book, which they always have every year, spotting the planes and the helicopters.
The BAE 146, regularly used to transport the royal family, of course, and senior government ministers across the world, as well as military commanders on the front line. The Typhoon FGR-4s racing across the sky towards Buckingham Palace, the royal family waiting. And as we look at the Typhoon formation, Duke of Cambridge just pointing out, as they wait for the spectacular finale. The red arrows streaming red, white and blue, as they will do over Buckingham Palace for this Queen's Birthday Parade of 2019. And what a sight that is. Not just a great sight, but a great sound as well, as they thunder through the skies. Thoroughly enjoyed by Her Majesty. The royal family will stay on the balcony for the final royal salute of this birthday parade. A huge round of applause for the flypast, and the applause joined in there by the youngest member on the balcony itself, very proudly waving and really getting into the royal habit pretty quickly. Queen clearly has enjoyed the parade today. And acknowledging the cheers of the crowds.
Prince Louis absolutely loving what's going on. Very enthusiastic.
Entering the spirit fully, I think.
Absolutely.
And so the Queen's birthday parade is over. It's the 67th of Her Majesty's reign, marked by a really great display of precision and style on Horse Guards, and the memorable sight of the vast crowds here at Buckingham Palace wishing Her Majesty a very happy birthday. Don't forget, you can enjoy it all again. Our highlights programme is on BBC Two this evening at 7:30. But for now, from my special guests, Lieutenant Colonel Vince Gaunt, Robert Hardman and Roy Anika, and indeed everyone on the BBC team at the Queen's birthday parade, thank you for watching and goodbye.